it's that time of year where it's starting to get really cold, and it's awesome because this little 65 horsepower J3 flies like a Super Cub. Takeoff rolls a couple hundred feet, climbs at like 1,000 feet per minute, which for this thing is just, it's unbelievable, right? The downside is I got to preheat, which you probably can't see it now, but I'm preheating now. So that requires, I got to remember in the morning to turn on the preheater. I don't have it via Wi-Fi or anything, so I use these timers. You push them in for when you want it to go on and off, and sometimes it gets confusing depending on which model you get. But if you can fly an airplane, I'm pretty sure you can figure it out. So I use that, and I have it's basically a little heating pad that heats up the oil tank. Here's the pad for the oil tank. There's a whole bunch of different shapes and sizes and power. You can get them on any of the aircraft websites like Aircraft Spruce, Wag Arrow, and they're really easy to install, and they work incredibly well. So take a look at those if you guys are looking for a simple solution. And I put a cover over the cowling, which I'll show you. Here's the cover. It's pretty small, lightweight. I could actually fit it in my airplane for when I go places and park the airplane for a couple hours. It is, I want to say it was a $200 or $300. I forget exactly, but you can get them from a whole bunch of different places. Where I got this one, I got it custom ordered. I put my tail number on it, and it's from Maximum Aircraft Covers. Usually after about, I'll call it like 2-3 hours, the entire engine and oil is pretty warm. I mean, you could really feel it. And there's been a couple times where the preheated oil is actually warmer than when I'm out flying, which I know is just terrible for the airplane, but that's kind of the struggles that we have with the Cub. I got to make sure I preheat it for a couple hours. I just recently, last year and this year, have an oil tank blanket, which, we'll see if it works. And it's made out of the same material that I use, these little blankets. Sometimes you'll see when I'm doing my flying videos, you'll see a white thing on the forward stick so you can see the movements that I'm doing. It's actually this. And what it does is you put it over the intake tubes. There they are. You can see them, the white cloth looking thing. They're really easy to install. They're just basically 2 buttons, and that's it. I really don't know if it does anything. Same with this oil tank blanket, but with the Cub, I got to try to do something, because in the winter I'll see oil temperatures are 110 degrees, which I know is just really, really not good for the engine. I'll do the intake tubes, the oil tank, and then this little block off plate here goes where the oil cooler is. I'll show you in the cowling. You could spend $50, $60, whatever this was, or you could just put a piece of painter's tape over it. It does the same thing. And I've also had some people, which I don't do this, and I probably should. I've had people mention putting painter's tape over here to block off the cooling baffles, or to reduce some of the airflow there. I haven't done that, and maybe I'll try it this year. One of the other things that you want to make sure you do in the winter is on the breather tube. Behind here, I have a whistle cut, because if you don't have that, and if this freezes down here because it's hanging out in the wind, you'll can see some moisture there. If that freezes, then the pressure's got nowhere to go, and then you blow your prop seal, and it's a big mess. So just avoid that by making a whistle cut in the breather tube, and all should be well. But again, I'm usually out flying really early in the morning before the kids wake up. So it's like 20-30 degrees, which it's great to fly the airplane in that weather because of the performance, but the heater on this thing is dismal at best. It's very drafty. So I think all of these things, if they do something, it's very small, but you got to try something, right? You want to do as best you can. So those are some of the things that I do. As far as oil goes, I use Phillips 66 to 20W50 in the winter. So again, that's there's not much you can do. You preheat, which I obviously suggest preheating in any airplane you fly. And I've seen some of the people use the Dragon preheaters with the propane and the hot air. and they'll do it for, like 20 minutes, and they'll get the cowling really hot, but the engine core, the oil is not warm. So this way, when I heat up the oil tank, it gets warm, and the heat kind of radiates up to the valves, valve train, all that stuff. And with the blanket, I'll show you with the blanket over the whole entire cow, it does a really, really good job. So that's all I could do for the Cub. If anyone has any recommendations on what they do, I think it's the Tannis heaters, which are like each individual cylinder. That's pretty awesome. I don't know if they make one for the J3, but this works pretty well. The only thing that kind of worries me a little bit, and not so much now that I fixed the push rod tube leak, but I would put on the preheater and there would just be smoke, and it's just the oil burning off. But if I'm not here, every time the preheater would go on in the morning, I'd kind of wait for a phone call from the airport manager saying, "Hey, you set the airport on fire." So that's something that I'm a little cautious of. And now lately, what I'll do is I'll come to the airport, put the preheater on, kind of putt around for an hour or two, drink coffee, and then go out flying. So that's what I do to winterize the Cub and preheat. And I think usually, the engine, if the oil temperature comes off the bottom and I slowly increase power and oil pressure stays below 50, I'm happy. And again, the problem that I have too is the type of flying that I do, it's a lot of up and down, takeoff and landings. So, that's not really good. It's really not good for the engine anyway, but in the winter, that shock cooling is really bad. So what I tend to do is I'll fly much larger patterns, believe it or not, and I'll slowly bring the power back. I'll fly power on approaches, try to kind of reduce that shock cooling on the airplane. And I've noticed in the winter, the type of flying that I do, when I check the oil screen, there's just so much carbon. So I know it's not good. I know I'm not heating up the oil as much as I should. And usually I'll change the oil every 20 to 25 hours. In the winter, I'll change it close to every 15 hours. It's cheap insurance, I guess. So that's all I got. Let me know if you guys have any tips, what you guys do for the winter stuff. You got to dress warm, but it's worth it. You get those real crystal clear mornings. I take off, I could see Atlantic City, Philadelphia, and Manhattan. That's pretty cool. It's good flying, but you got to kind of prepare for it, and you got to sacrifice your own personal warmth, but it's definitely worth it. All right.